We have sad news to report out of the film industry tonight. Actress Hayden Panettiere has died at the age of 36, her father confirming her passing just a short time ago. Panettiere was known for her roles in the hit shows Heroes and Nashville.
Hayden Panettiere passed away on August 16, 2026, 5 days shy of what would have been her 37th birthday. Within hours, the news had traveled through nearly every entertainment outlet in the country, carried less by official statements than by a wave of shock from people who had grown up watching her on screen. Behind the headlines sat a far more complicated picture, a career that spanned 3 decades, an estate that outside estimates placed somewhere between $6 and $15 million, a young daughter growing up thousands of miles away in Europe, and a family that had already buried one child before the second devastating loss arrived. This is a story of what she built, what she survived, and what she left behind. The first confirmed details came from the Greenville County Coroner's Office in South Carolina, which said emergency responders were called to a private residence on Sunday, August 16th, after a 911 call reporting an unresponsive woman. Panettiere was found in cardiac arrest. Paramedics attempted advanced life-saving measures at the scene, but she could not be revived, and she was pronounced dead early that afternoon. An autopsy was performed the following day. According to the coroner's office, the examination turned up no signs of trauma that would explain her death, and law enforcement in Greenville stated publicly that nothing about the scene pointed to foul play. Still, officials were careful to note that the official cause and manner of death remained pending, contingent on toxicology results and further study, a process that in most jurisdictions can take weeks to complete. That distinction matters, because it means the full picture of what happened in her final hours is, as of this writing, still incomplete. What is known is that Panettiere had traveled from Los Angeles to the South the day before her death, reportedly with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, actor Brian Hickerson. Some outlets reporting on her final days noted she had mentioned back pain over the past year, though there has been no confirmation that this was connected in any way to her death. Her longtime publicist offered only a brief comment confirming that police had responded to an incident and that an investigation was open, language that was repeated across dozens of stories without much elaboration. Her father, Alan Skip Panettiere, released a short statement on behalf of the family, describing his daughter as a source of light who brought joy to everyone who knew her, both those close to her and the millions of strangers who had followed her career for decades. He asked, gently but firmly, for privacy while the family absorbed a loss he called unimaginable. It was a modest request, but one that stood in sharp contrast to the scale of public attention the story generated almost immediately. The outpouring that followed was notable not just for its size, but for its range. Viola Davis, who had co-starred with Panettiere in the 2016 film Custody, wrote publicly about how much more time the world deserved with her, describing watching someone rise from hardship the way a phoenix rises from ash. Former castmates from Bring It On, Heroes, and Nashville posted similar messages within hours of the news breaking, several of them recalling a warmth that rarely came through in her more guarded public interviews. Crew members who had worked alongside her on Nashville specifically mentioned something that kept surfacing in tribute after tribute, her habit of remembering names. Not just the names of fellow actors, but camera operators, background performers, and people whose jobs rarely earned them a mention from the stars they worked alongside. Her ex-fiancé, Ukrainian boxing champion Wladimir Klitschko, also released a statement, saying she had left the world far too soon and promising to keep her memory alive for their daughter. It was a small but telling detail, that even a relationship that had ended years earlier still carried enough weight for him to speak publicly, and specifically about the child they shared. To understand why the loss registered so widely across audiences who might otherwise have nothing in common, it helps to go back to the beginning of a career that started before she could even form full sentences. Hayden Leslie Panettiere was born on August 21st, 1989, in Palisades, New York. Her mother, Leslie Vogel, was a former soap opera actress who later took on the role of managing her daughter's early career. Her father, Alan Skip Panettiere, worked as a fire captain. By 11 months old, Hayden had already appeared in her first commercial. By age 4, she had a recurring role on the ABC soap opera One Life to Live. 2 years after that, she moved to another daytime drama, Guiding Light, where her character was written into a storyline battling leukemia, a plot that earned the young actress formal recognition from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. It's a detail that rarely makes it into modern retrospectives of her career, but it says something about how early she was connected with audiences on more than just a surface level. Her film career developed alongside her television work. She voiced Princess in Pixar's A Bug's Life, appeared opposite Denzel Washington as Cheryl Yost in Remember the Titans, and spent much of her early adolescence in family-friendly films like Ice Princess and Raising Helen. None of that, however, fully prepared audiences for what came in 2006, when a 15-year-old actress playing a cheerleader with the ability to heal from any injury turned her into a household name almost overnight. Panettiere's role as Claire Bennet on NBC's Heroes kept her on primetime television for 4 consecutive seasons. Her face became so central to the show's marketing that she appeared on more merchandise than any other cast member, including the actors who played the show's central characters. Fans knew the catchphrase associated with her character, "Save the cheerleader, save the world," as well as they knew any line from the era's most popular dramas. When Heroes ended its run in 2010, Panettiere didn't fade from view the way many young stars of ensemble dramas do. Instead, she landed the role that would define the next chapter of her career. Juliette Barnes, a talented but ruthless country music star on ABC's Nashville. The show ran for 6 seasons and earned her 2 Golden Globe nominations, cementing her as one of the most recognizable faces associated with the city's music industry, even though she wasn't a country singer by trade. For years, fans speculated that the character was loosely modeled on one or more real country artists of the era. Panettiere pushed back on that theory directly and repeatedly, insisting Juliette Barnes wasn't based on any single performer, despite the constant online comparisons that followed her for the rest of the show's run. Her career after Nashville continued to stretch across genres. She played Kirby Reed in Scream 4 and reprised a role years later in Scream 6. She lent her voice to Kyrie across the Kingdom Hearts video game franchise, introducing her to an entirely new generation of fans who had never watched a single episode of Heroes. She voiced Kate in the animated film Alpha and Omega and recorded audiobooks in between acting projects. Her final credited role came earlier this year in the direct-to-video thriller Sleepwalker, a quiet ending to a career that moved through daytime soap operas, network primetime dramas, horror franchises, and animated features over more than 3 decades. Her formal schooling ended relatively early. After attending South Orangetown Middle School, she transitioned to private tutors starting in 9th grade, a common arrangement for young performers whose filming schedules make traditional classrooms impossible. She has said in past interviews that she once considered stepping away from acting to pursue a more conventional education, but the offer to play Claire Bennet on Heroes arrived before that plan could take shape. Her family background includes Italian heritage along with some English and German ancestry, a detail she occasionally referenced when asked about her surname, which loosely translates to Baker in Italian, and which fans have spent years mispronouncing. Reports compiled after her death place her net worth somewhere between $6 million and roughly $15 million, a wide enough range to say something about how imprecise these estimates tend to be once you move past a single career-defining salary figure. Much of that fortune traced back to Nashville, where she reportedly earned around $75,000 per episode across the show's 124-episode run, adding up to somewhere close to $9 million from that role alone. Heroes reportedly contributed close to $2 million more, and Scream 4 added roughly $1 million on top of that. None of those figures account for her music-related earnings, her voice acting income, or the years she spent as a brand ambassador for companies including Neutrogena, Candies, Kohl's, and Dooney and Burke, for whom she once helped design a limited edition handbag. Her real estate history offers its own small window into her finances. She purchased a home in the Hollywood Hills in 2008 for roughly $2.6 million and sold it in 2014 for just over $3 million. She later sold a property in Nashville in October 2018 for $1.65 million, around the same period her personal life was becoming publicly turbulent, a timing overlap that may help explain why estimates of her final estate vary so widely depending on which source is doing the counting. Long before any of that financial picture took shape, an 18-year-old Panettiere was already using her public profile for something considerably riskier than an endorsement deal. In October 2007, serving as the official spokesperson for the Whaleman Foundation's Save the Whales Again campaign, she joined Sea Shepherd activists who paddled on surfboards into a cove in Taiji, Japan, attempting to disrupt the town's annual dolphin hunt. Local fishermen pushed the activists back towards shore with poles, and the confrontation was later captured in the cove, the documentary that went on to win the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. In the weeks that followed, reports surfaced claiming Japan had issued an arrest warrant against her for interfering with the hunt. She addressed the claim publicly at the time, saying she had only just learned about it and doubted anything serious would come of it, a claim the Japanese Fisheries Agency later disputed outright. That November, Peter recognized her efforts with his Compassion in Action Award. She returned to Taiji in 2010, this time alongside Klitschko, in an unsuccessful attempt to meet with the town's mayor and local fisheries officials, who declined to open the doors of the Union Hall despite having reportedly been inside just minutes earlier. Her activism extended well beyond that single high-profile trip. She personally delivered protest letters to both the Norwegian and Japanese ambassadors calling for an end to commercial whaling. At a 2007 Greenpeace event in Alaska, she made a point of distinguishing traditional Aboriginal whaling practices from commercial whale hunting, defending the former even as she opposed the latter. She became a vegetarian, joined the Celebrity Advisory Board of Ronald McDonald House Charities, and at one point auctioned off a private dinner and whale-watching trip with herself to raise money for ocean conservation. She reportedly carried a small tattoo intended to read as an Italian phrase meaning live without regrets, though the wording was famously misspelled, a detail longtime fans brought up again and again in tribute threads in the days after her death, as a strangely fitting footnote to a life that rarely slowed down for anyone's comfort, including her own. Panettiere's most significant relationship began in 2009 with Ukrainian heavyweight boxing champion Wladimir Klitschko. The two met at a launch event for a photography book they had both been featured in. Their relationship went through more than one breakup and reconciliation before the couple got engaged in October 2013. In December 2014, Panettiere gave birth to their daughter, Kaya Evdokia Klitschko, in Hawaii. The relationship eventually ended, and in 2018 Panettiere made what she later described as an incredibly difficult decision, relinquishing full custody of Kaya to Klitschko while she sought treatment for alcoholism, substance abuse, and severe postpartum depression. In the years since, Kaya has grown up primarily in Europe with her father, rather than in the United States. Speaking about the arrangement years later on a podcast, Panettiere said her daughter understood she had two parents who loved her, and that the distance between them never translated into a feeling of abandonment, because both parents made sure Kaya felt supported emotionally, physically, and spiritually. She described staying connected through visits and long video calls whenever her schedule allowed. Conversations, she said, that went well beyond small talk into what she called really deep things. Speaking openly about postpartum depression came at a real professional cost. Not long after she discussed the condition publicly on a daytime talk show, Neutrogena dropped her as a spokesperson, a decision that, viewed against how openly public figures now discuss mental health, looks strikingly out of step with where the industry stands today. Not long after her split from Klitschko, Panettiere began a relationship with actor Brian Hickerson, one that would come to be defined, at least in the public record, by a pattern of legal trouble stretching across nearly 2 years. Hickerson was first arrested in May 2019 on a felony domestic violence allegation. He was booked in the early morning hours and released the following afternoon after posting $50,000 bond. That case was ultimately dismissed months later, after the couple reportedly reconciled. He was arrested again in February 2020, this time in Wyoming, accused of punching her in the face on Valentine's Day. He pleaded not guilty to domestic battery that April. By July 2020, he faced 8 separate charges connected to the relationship, including 4 felony counts of injuring a spouse or girlfriend, 1 misdemeanor battery count, 2 felony count of assault with a deadly weapon, and 1 felony count of dissuading a witness from prosecuting a crime. That same month, Panettiere chose to speak publicly about what she'd gone through, writing that she was coming forward with the truth in the hope that her story might help empower others in abusive relationships to seek the help they deserved, and that she was prepared to do whatever was necessary to make sure the same thing didn't happen to anyone else. Her attorney told reporters at the time that she had endured years of psychological, emotional, and severe physical abuse before finding the courage to see the legal case through to its conclusion. Hickerson ultimately pleaded no contest to 2 felony counts in 2021. He received 45 days in county jail, for years of probation, 52 mandatory domestic violence, classes, $500 in restitution, and a 5-year protective order barring any contact with her. Despite that order, the two later reconciled, and multiple outlets reported that they were together again in the days leading up to her death this month. Underneath everything else Panettiere navigated publicly, there was a private grief that friends and family say never fully resolved. In February 2023, her younger brother, Jansen Panettiere, also an actor, known for films including The Perfect Game and The Martial Arts Kid, died suddenly at 28. The cause was later identified as complications from an undiagnosed, enlarged heart combined with aortic valve issues. Panettiere wrote about that loss extensively in her memoir and spoke about it in interviews in the years that followed, describing a guilt that never fully lifted. In one conversation, she said that losing him felt like losing half of herself. The two siblings, who had grown up almost entirely inside the entertainment industry together, had remained close throughout their adult lives, which made his sudden death, from a condition no one in the family knew he had, especially difficult to process. In May 2026, just months before her death, Panettiere released her memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, through Grand Central Publishing. Her publisher described it as an unflinching look behind closed doors, covering her experience with postpartum depression, addiction and recovery, trauma, domestic abuse, and the loss of her brother, all in detail she had rarely offered publicly before. Fans lined up outside a Manhattan bookstore for her signing that month, many of them, by account from the event, drawn not by nostalgia for heroes or Nashville, but by a need to hear someone with a famous face describe struggles they recognized in their own lives. Those close to the project have noted that the months surrounding the book's release seemed to mark a genuine turning point for her. She appeared on podcasts and daytime programs promoting the memoir, and by most accounts came across as more settled and self-assured than she had in years. That contrast, a woman who appeared to finally be finding solid ground, only to die suddenly weeks later, is part of why the news of her death landed with such force across platforms that don't usually cover the same celebrity stories with the same urgency. In the end, what Hayden Panettiere leaves behind resists being reduced to a single number or a single headline. There is an estate valued somewhere between $6 and $15 million, depending on which outside estimate is used. There is a body of work spanning more than 3 decades and dozens of film and television credits, built by someone who began working before she could walk and kept working in one form or another until earlier this year. There is a daughter who will grow up with her mother's own words available to her, rather than secondhand summaries pieced together from tabloids. And there's a family that had already endured one devastating, sudden loss just 3 years earlier, now facing a second, and once again asking a public that watched her entire life unfold on camera for the one thing fame rarely allows, a bit of privacy to grieve. There is also a version of her legacy that has nothing to do with money at all. A teenager who paddled a surfboard into a Japanese cove because she believed it mattered. A mother who made an agonizing custody decision because she believed it was ultimately best for her daughter. And a woman who spent the final months of her life writing down the hardest